Welcome to the Restoration Group podcast, where we're sometimes silly, but always serious, known as Salerious for John and I today. And on our podcast, where we invest in Oklahoma City leaders who desire to integrate their Christian faith into their business. I am your host, Clay Steves, and today I am joined by a wonderful guest, and very excited for this time. I am joined today by Mr. John Ortberg. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Clay. Awfully glad to be here, and I love your energy, and I'm honored to get to have this conversation.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to read a formal bio now. I'm going to do the formal part. So John is a pastor, author, and speaker. He's been in ministry for over 40 years and teaches around a central theme of spiritual formation. John is a deep believer that the main thing God gets out of your life is the person you become. He desires for people to know God in an interactive, life-transforming way. And presently, John leads the ministry Become New, focused on helping you grow spiritually one day at a time. John also has a great podcast with Become New that is about 10 to 14 minutes. It's become a part of my every single morning rhythm. After I drop my kids to school, I've got about a 14-minute drive to the office, and that is a part of calibrating my heart in the morning, John. So thank you for doing that. And sharing that with so many of us in the Fellowship of the Withered Hand. So thank you.
Thanks, Clay. I'm glad to know. I'll keep that little picture in my mind of you out in Oklahoma City on the drive. It's amazing how technology allows us to connect with people, and I'm really glad to know that. Thanks.
Of course. Well, thank you for being so consistent and doing it. Okay, so the first subject I want to go down, we're going to start on the serious side. Though we were Salerious at the start, I'm going to go to the serious now.
Yes.
John, I want to talk in the context. And so I want to speak to leaders who at some point had, I'm going to say, trust. They had privilege, influence, or power. Okay. So in other words, they were in a place of authority, influence, power. And because of their own actions, or maybe other circumstances, either way, John, that authority, that influence, that power has been taken away, is gone. I think of my own season and my own story some a little bit where when I was in school, and again, I was raised in privilege, wonderful mother and father, had every opportunity in front of me that the world could offer. And I battled substance abuse. I lied. I wrecked my life into a hole to where I flunked out of college. Okay. Flunked out of undergrad, leaving a wake of painful destruction. And for a long time, John, I really, really, really struggled to come out of that season. Okay. And so what I want to ask you to talk through is that kind of a lens. How does one emerge from what I'm going to call the ashes? We could call that season the ashes, through God's grace and not through trying to perform or strive their way out of that type of a season.
Yeah. It's a wonderful question. I think that, speaking as somebody who is of the Christian faith, in our tradition, in our faith, there's an understanding that the cross is at the center of human history, and that somehow when the ultimate help of the human race, Jesus came, his career trajectory was not up and to the right. He experienced as humiliating, public, and painful a failure as it's possible to experience. He was crucified, and that was Rome's way of saying, this is not the Messiah. The title that he was laying claim to was not actually his. And then in some way, when he was doing that, he was identifying with all of us. And he was in some way embracing and expressing and taking on our weakness and our inadequacy. And part of what that means is wherever I fail, wherever I suffer, wherever I go wrong, God can be there, and in fact can be there in unique ways. And one of the stories that's been very meaningful to me over these last years, because I've experienced really, really difficult times in my life with family and work. And so is a time when Jesus was in a synagogue teaching, and there was a man there who had a withered hand. And I'm sure that that's the last thing in the world that he wanted anybody to notice about him, because in that day, big stigma, to be not normally abled is bad enough in our day. It was worse in that day. And Jesus actually has him stand up so that everybody can look at him, and then says, stretch out your hand. And that would be the one thing that the guy couldn't do. I mean, if he could do that, then he wouldn't need help. And the one thing he wouldn't want people to notice about him. And yet it's precisely that vulnerability and that call to expose your weakness that becomes the occasion for the power of God in that place. And that man has changed. And I think there's a deep picture of the way that life works. I've been also very interested in 12 steps, recovery movement, addiction over these last several years. And, for folks who understand about that, actually the place that begins is not, I will identify my strength and lead with that. It's, I came to believe that I was powerless over whatever my problem was, and my life has become unmanageable. And then came to believe that there is a power greater than me that can restore me to sanity. And then made the decision to surrender. It's sometimes summarized, I can't, he can, I think I'll let him. And anybody who's listening to us right now, no matter what the problem is, no matter how badly you have messed up, no matter how low you have sunk, that possibility is there to be able to say, I can't, he can, I think I'll let him. And the paradox is that we find power in vulnerability and weakness that we do not find when we are doing impression management.
I can't, he can, I think I'll let him. Yeah, that's it in my heart and in my mind makes sense, right, John? It's just this element of, in practicality in life, like how do I take that posture day to day if I'm in that spot, right? Because again, in a business where the circumstances are falling around me. We're talking to business leaders. I'm talking to people who have had it, and it seems like everything else that's built around me. I guess talk me to that posture in the day-to-day of life. Maybe how I keep that posture in the day-to-day. Maybe that's a better question. How do I keep that posture in the day-to-day as it seems the circumstances around me are collapsing, or I can't get out of the ashes that I am in?
Yeah. So there's a wonderful thinker about work, vocation, creativity, a guy named Andy Crouch, who writes terrific stuff about human vocation, what it means to exercise dominion, be made in the image of God. And one book of his that I really like is called Strong and Weak. And he talks about authority and vulnerability. And he says, often we think about those two dynamics as though they are on opposite ends of a single spectrum. Either you're strong or you're weak. Either you have authority or you're vulnerable. But he says, actually, you have to picture them as two intersecting axes. So you can be high in authority or you can be low in authority. And then you can be high in vulnerability or you can be low in vulnerability. And that actually creates kind of four quadrants. He says that we were made by God to be both high in authority and high on vulnerability. Authority, he defines as capacity for meaningful action. So that's to have power. And if you're involved in business, you want to be able to do that. That's what it means to exercise dominion. I want to be able to make plans. I want to be able to cast vision. I want to be able to build a team. I want to be able to accumulate resources. I want to be able to achieve metrics. That's a very good thing. So to say, I can't, it doesn't mean that I cannot do those things. I can't carry authority. We are meant to do that. And then to be vulnerable, vulnerability gets talked about a lot in our day, and there are celebrities who get credit for being vulnerable when they do selective disclosure, but often that's quite carefully crafted. It's not actual genuine vulnerability. Vulnerability, Andy says, is exposure to meaningful risk. Exposure to meaningful risk. Anybody who's really going into business may fail. And so I'm being exposed to meaningful risk. And there's no way to genuinely enter into the arena without that and without failing sometimes. We would all like to never have to fail, but then we're not genuinely being vulnerable. And you'll have terrific people that think about work like Patrick Lencioni, who will say, at the core of addressing the 5 dysfunctions of the team is a lack of trust. And the only way to build trust is vulnerability, exposure to meaningful risk. So one of the temptations in work is I want to be high in authority, but I don't want to be vulnerable. And when I'm doing that, I'm exploiting people. That's the dictator. That's the tyrant. We all want to go to that direction. That's actually the temptation in the garden when you think about it. For people who know the Bible at all, the serpent says to Eve, if you eat from the forbidden tree, your eyes will be open and you will be like God. The illusion is you can be all authority, no vulnerability. You will surely not die. And so, for example, if I decide that I want to drink, the reason I'll do that is if I have enough alcohol and I go to a party, it will take away my sense of vulnerability and my fear. So I'll feel like I'm all authority and no vulnerability. Of course, what happens is you do that often enough and you go down to the opposite quadrant, all vulnerability, no authority. You become dependent on alcohol, you become weak, your life gets messed up. So anytime we go in the direction of, I want to be all authority and no vulnerability, ultimately it leads us down into that opposite quadrant of all vulnerability, that's the suffering quadrant. All suffering, no power. And now, if I have neither authority nor weakness, that's just withdrawal, disengagement, run away. However, the way that God made us is to be high in authority. Again, if people know the Bible on this kind of thing, God creates human beings in his own image. That's very high authority. Let them exercise dominion and rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air. And the idea is not that we exploit the earth, that we take responsibility and the initiation and we bring good out of it. And that's what every business is to be. That's what culture making is. We take creation. Grain is good. Bread is very good. Eggs are good. Omelets, very good. Grapes are good. Wine is very good. That's work. Culture is to move creation from good to very good. And we exercise authority and do that. But at the same time, when God creates human beings, the text says they are naked and not ashamed. And again, Patrick Lencioni, he's got a little business fable. I think the title of it is Getting Naked. And the first word of it is vulnerability. So for somebody, when you feel like your life's fallen apart, things have not turned out the way that you want to, your reputation looks really bad in front of other people, you experience a big failure, to embrace, I am deeply vulnerable, and yet at the same time, I continue to be an image bearer who has been given intelligence and initiative and will and energy from God. And I will seek to use those to serve him and other people as best I can. That's possible for anybody. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter what your title is. Doesn't matter how many times you have been fired. That's available to anybody right now today. And you just start where you are today. And if you don't have a job, if you don't have a paycheck, you just start in your home where you live with somebody that you see in your neighborhood, at a school, as a volunteer. You just start right there. How can I seek to create value where I am today with God helping me?
The paradox, authority and vulnerability. We were made to have and exercise both. Made to have and exercise both.
And if you think about the ultimate paradigm, and again, in my tradition, that would be Jesus for folks that know about him. There's a passage in the Bible, the second chapter of a book called Philippians, where it talks about him being in very nature God. Now, that would be very high authority. The last words he speaks in the book of Matthew after his resurrection are, all authority on heaven and earth have been given to me. That's the most audacious thing any human being has ever said. Napoleon never said
Yeah.
that. You pick anybody, Caesar Augustus, Alexander the Great. Nobody ever said all authority in heaven and earth. And at the same time, we're told he became a human being, took on the form of a servant, and humbled himself to obedience to the point of death, even death on the cross. That's the greatest vulnerability that has ever been seen in the history of the human race. So the paradigmatic person expressed ultimate authority and lived and died in ultimate vulnerability. That's what makes human flourishing possible. And for anybody who's listening to us, to aim at not thinking about those as two alternatives, but to seek to live with appropriate God-given authority in service of others with great confidence and great energy, great creativity, great ability to engage in meaningful action, and ultimate vulnerability. That's where we flourish.
I'm sitting with it, John, because I think I have sat in the lens or the paradigm before of those being opposite of each other. And so it was relinquishing one to move towards the other. And so that's I would say it's a powerful concept for me to have both of those, but to recognize, of course, where the authority comes from, right? I mean, that's the key in the space, is to keep those in balance and know that it's given from where.
Yeah, I think you were talking before about this issue of integration. And, we talk a lot about integration of faith and work. I had a mentor, Max Dupree, who was the CEO of a great furniture company back in Michigan and was just a terrific leader. And he used to say sometimes, it's important to remember we don't integrate our faith into our work. We integrate our work into our faith.
Come on now.
You always integrate the lower thing into the higher thing. And so I have to be living in such a way that my faith, what I believe most deeply about life, about value, about God, about human purpose, that's the foundation of my life. That's what I'm seeking to pursue all the time. So the question is, how do I integrate my work, my job, my vocation into that ultimate purpose of my life? It's not that my work is the ultimate good, and then I have, some religious opinions and I try to figure out how to cram them into my work. I don't integrate my faith up into my work. I integrate my work up into that greater good and driving force, which is my faith. And I just thought that was a super helpful framework.
Oh, it's fantastic. And we've, as you're talking, like we've used some other language talking about, we don't want to function in the earth economy. We want our business to function in the king's economy, right? We're trying to integrate up into the larger, but we've never done it with the other inverse. And I think that is a powerful shift to recognize the integration happens from the minor into the major note. And so to take that up into, keep doing that. 18 minutes in and you're already like reframing my business, John. That's good stuff. I like it. John, talk to me. Let's talk to a leader. Real quick. Cause I think when I look at Jesus's ministry, when I look at the men and the women that he led, like that he kept closest to him, many of them had stories, right? By earthly perspective, they had checkered stories, one might say. Yeah. And so often I think a symptom of a business that's integrating their work into their faith. See, I'm trying to do it there. I'm already going to try to apply that lens in teaching, is that you will be bringing people from, and I'm going to kind of close our Ashes conversation about those seasons of like maybe the hard, or we're coming out of really understanding who we are and leaning into Christ being who gives us life, right? Where we emerge from our brokenness. How does talk to a leader who is leading someone going through that season. So the leader themselves might be in a healthy spot, have the balance of authority and vulnerability, but they have brought into their team someone who is earlier on the journey. And so maybe counsel the leader coaching someone else, because it's one thing to do it yourself. It's another to guide and be patient and allow someone else to go on that journey as well. How would you, what's one piece of counsel you would give to them as they are helping someone emerge from one of those kind of seasons?
So I'll tell you a story about this one. My wife, Nancy, works for an organization. It's a not-for-profit in the Bay Area, trying to pull together faith leaders. And the chair of her board is a guy named Pat Gelsinger. And some of our listeners might know Pat. He's the CEO of Intel. Pat he's also on the board of my little Become New. So he's like highly overqualified. But he's actually embraced now one of the most difficult leadership challenges of the 21st century. As folks who know the tech field will know, Intel is a company with an extraordinary legacy. And they made a bet on not producing chips a long time ago, which has turned out not well. They're trying to see, can they turn that around? And Pat has taken that on. He's been leading it for a couple of years, but he has a mountain to climb and nobody knows, is it doable or not? It's been an unbelievable battle. And Pat is one of the most gifted, driving. He's a very devoted follower of Jesus, a person of amazing faith, very tough, very strong-minded. I don't think I know anybody who would be more committed to achieving mission that Pat Gelsinger is. Their word around Intel these days is torrid. He's actually given everybody T-shirts with just the word torrid on it. My spiritual mentor, Dallas Willard, used to say, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Pat's word is torrid. So there's an interesting challenge for anybody of faith, is to think about, how do you ruthlessly eliminate hurry and produce torrid work? And I won't go deeper into that, but it's a good thing to think about. When Nance and I hit a very difficult, very painful season in our life, it involved our family, lots of trauma. Nancy initially thought maybe she was just going to have to step down from her work. She knew Pat, as the chair of the board, very results oriented. He's got a very high level of vision. He was expecting very high impact that would be measurable in the Bay Area. And she was deeply wounded. And so when she was explaining to Pat, she said, she kind of went through everything and ended up by saying, I feel like now I can only give you like 40%. And then Pat said, all right, I'll take 40%. And then when you give me 50, I'll take 50. And when you give me 60, I'll take 60. And she was just stunned. And what he was saying to her was, he trusted her, he believed in her. Now, he had seen before, he knew what she was capable of. So he was not talking to somebody who was fundamentally unsuited for a role that would not be able to do it. That would not be doing them a favor. So you might take somebody who doesn't have the right gifts and competencies for a job. Being a Christian leader or a spiritual leader or a kind leader isn't tolerating non-performance. Pat knew she could do it, but he knew she was deeply wounded right now. So to say, I know what you're able to do, and I see where you are right now, and I believe in you, so I will give you time. And I will take what you're able to give right now, and I will trust together with you that the day is coming that you'll be able to give more, and then we'll work on that together. That spoke so deeply to Nancy. That was several years ago, and we remember and talk about that, quite frequently. So if you're leading somebody and they're wounded, they're in a situation where they have the capacity, but right now they are hurting, and you don't know exactly what the future is, to find the way to say, I will take what you're able to give today and trust with you that will rise tomorrow. man, that's a powerful, powerful voice into somebody's life. And that will be with Nancy till the day she dies. That'll be with her long after this job.
Yeah. One of our partners at Restoration Group talked about it before, John, in one of our previous episode on patience, which is one of our principles about integrating work into faith. And she referenced a painter who had this painting of a cheetah in casts. And the phrase that just, I could just picture that image that she shared with us before, John, as you were talking, because with that, in the phrase that went with it was have grace for your pace. In other words, understand the season. And as you're talking about, Pat knew that Nancy is a cheetah. He knew she could run 80 miles an hour. He just knew in the season that she was in, because she had cast on, she couldn't. And so there's this element of, that's a way to bring our work into our faith, is to extend that, have a good crucial conversation, be on the same page, but to extend that level of patience. And I appreciate you sharing that story, because that's you extending us and me and our listeners' vulnerability, even to share that story of that season for you and your fam and for Nancy. Wow. John, earlier you've referenced multiple sources externally, right? You've talked about the 12-step program. You've referenced other Andy Crouch. We've talked about Pat, who we love and are big fans of, and in a lot of your teaching and content, you often will reference, because you are, from my experience, if I'm wrong on this, correct me, but like a student of history, an avid learner. Input is probably high for you in strengths, and so. How do you balance, as you use all these other sources as well, how do you balance inputting from a wide variety of sources and with biblical principles, and knowing that, God is our source? And so how do you balance secular sources and use them well in compliance? Maybe that's not the right word, in balance with pursuing genuine relationship with God, and then applying that stuff in our work settings?
I love that question. There's an ancient statement by the thinker Augustine, maybe the most influential thinker since the New Testament writers in the history of the church. And he says simply, all truth is God's truth. So
Augustine,
if something is true, if something is true, it can only be true because it's a result of God's creating it. I'm actually just starting to tape right now some episodes based on Genesis, and it is such a fabulous book, such remarkable statements, and that notion that God created everything that is. And so mathematics, one of the interesting dynamics in Hebrew, the language Hebrew that the Old Testament was written in, is in Hebrew, there is no word for nature. There's just creation. Just creation. So in our day, we tend to think about nature, what's natural, and then the supernatural. And maybe there is such a thing as the supernatural, and we're not sure. And so we'll put the Bible in that category, and certain kind of statements in that category, that's spiritual, and then other things are secular. That distinction between spiritual or sacred and secular simply did not exist, for instance, in the world in which the Bible was written. There was no nature, there was just creation and creator. So there is no truth that is not God's truth. And again, my friend Dallas Willard would sometimes say to people, because people kind of get worried sometimes about, well, if I try to pursue truth so far, maybe it will get in the way of me believing and being a really good Christian. And Dallas would say, Jesus would be the first person to tell you, you must follow the truth wherever it leads. Jesus would be the first person to tell you, you must follow the truth wherever it leads. There's a way in which you must be more important, you must be more devoted to truth than you are Jesus. Because if you're not, what will happen is you'll feel like, well, if I really radically pursue truth, it might get in the way of my Christianity, so I won't do it. But then what's happening is I don't really believe. I don't really think it's true. and then the mind becomes divided against itself, and faith becomes tottering. I believe deeply and would encourage anybody who's listening to us now to seek truth, to pursue truth everywhere, in every sphere, from mathematics to principles of good leadership, to the hard sciences, to what it is that Scripture teaches, to psychology. Always be seeking to integrate them. Always ask, how does what I learn over here relate to what I'm seeking to learn over here? And then trust that ultimately all truth coheres together, because in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and there is one reality, and that means there is one truth, and we can follow it boldly and courageously, and we don't have to be anxious about learning it anywhere.
And you would encourage people at any portion of the faith journey to take that posture, whether, meaning maybe they just came to Christ, maybe that's they're towards the end of their journey in life and very mature of following. You would espouse this, all truth is God's truth, and to be open to how we can learn about God, truth, from anything in creation.
The alternative is to say that actually reality is other than how God made it. So if somebody really pursues truth, it might lead him in the wrong direction. Now, a real important question for everybody to ask is, what do I want to be true? What do I want to be true? Because we are not just Geiger counters with perfectly objective minds. We are desirers every bit as much as we are thinkers. And one of the truths about us is we all end up believing, we tend to end up believing what we want to believe. And so people who want to believe in God tend to end up believing in God. People who don't want to believe in God tend to end up not believing in God. So it's important also, I think, to pay attention to what is it that you want to believe. But that's where I think, we live in a day where kind of postmodern skepticism can simply believe nobody can ever know truth. And I don't think that's true. I think it's possible to pursue truth. And I think that's part of why God says, seek for me and you will find me if you seek me with all your heart.
All of your heart.
With a genuinely open spirit.
Jeremiah.
But if that's the case, if I'm sincerely seeking truth, it's interesting in the Bible, like in the book of Proverbs, they actually have proverbs from outside Israel, from other traditions that make it into the Bible. Paul ends up quoting Greek philosophers who were not believers at all, and that ends up making it in the Bible. Bad company corrupts good morals. So it's like even in the Bible, you have examples of people learning from outside the Bible, and that actually gets in the Bible. Yes. I think that's a huge help for anybody, wherever they are in their spiritual journey.
You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. Yeah. John, multiple times today, you've referenced leaders, like you referenced, Max Dupree, you referenced as a leader, Dallas Willard, you've mentioned multiple times. One of the principles we have, one of the ways we win at our company is investing in outside coaching. I've been very blessed. Even the mutual connection for you and I that brought us together is somebody that I would say I have the privilege of. He mentors me and I get to stand on his shoulders, right? So, and this idea of standing on the shoulders of giants, standing on those who have gone before us. I read Soul Keeping, which is one of your books, a couple summers ago. And after reading it, John, I began to take longer, slower days with my mentor, Kevin, and I began to schedule half-day walks with him, where he and I would just not schedule a 1 hour. I come with 5 questions and we're powering through them, but much more just spending space and time together. And I wanted to ask you the question, and I get emotional asking this question, John. So just, I guess, give me a little grace. My mama passed away about 1.5 years ago. And so I often think about this question when I ask it to you. I think about it with my mom. If you had half a day with Dallas, who has passed now and who I know was very dear to you, how would you spend half a day with a man that you would call a giant that you were able to stand on his shoulders?
Yeah, it's a very moving question for me, Clay. This week marked the 10th anniversary of Dallas's death.
I did not know
And
that.
so he is someone, for folks listening who may not know, he taught philosophy for many, many decades at University of Southern California. And he was as smart as anybody I have ever known, and wrote in the most helpful way that I know about faith and all of life, including work and leadership, every topic. But what was wonderful about Dallas was his heart was better than his mind was. And anybody who would get to be around him would think, I would just like to be like him. I would like to have that kind of a life. And interestingly, it was just a few days after Dallas's death that I first met Kevin, who became a dear friend and mentor for me as for you. So it may have been 10 years today. It was just about, it was exactly 10 years ago this week.
Wow.
And I'll tell you the first question I would ask Dallas if I could spend a half a day with him right now. He died of pancreatic cancer. And as he was dying one time, he was just kind of looking off in the distance. And he said, you know, after I die, I think it may be some time before I realize it's happened. And I had never thought about that possibility before. But he would talk sometimes about, for example, how Jesus said, whoever trusts in me will never taste death. What does it mean to taste death? And Dallas would say, your primary life is not, just your heart beating or your lungs pumping. Your primary life is that unceasing stream of thoughts and desires and choices and considering that never stops going on inside you. That is your life. That is your life. And that will not stop. That your body will die, but you will go right on. And those thoughts that you have been having and those desires and that will just continue right on. So he said, it may be after I die, because I will go right on, because my mind will go right on, because those thoughts will just carry right on. It may be sometime after I've died before I realize, hey, I died. So if I were able to have half a day with him, with his having been on the other side, I think I would begin by asking, how long did it take?
How long did it take?
Before you realized that you were dead? And then what was it like? What have you seen? What have you experienced? It's a funny thing in thinking about tender issues like those we love in life and death. I remember one time I was at church and I had a picture in my mind, not of heaven or God or Jesus or what that would be like, but it was like in my mind, I saw Dallas's face when Dallas was seeing God. And just to see that face that I know light up in the radiance of his seeing what I don't yet know was kind of overwhelming to me. And, just that image, when you think about your mom, my dad died almost 4 years ago. And, to think of looking at that face when they see, now we see through a glass darkly, then we will see face to face. What must it be like just to look into a face that is seeing face to face? I'd like to see that face. I'd like to see that face.
What do you have going on in your life that you would tell him about? What would be when he asked about you and what was going on, what would you share with him?
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, it's just been a difficult season personally for our family work. And so has shifted a lot. I never got the chance to talk with Dallas personally about that. And I have
Yeah.
found, one of the strange gifts and blessings of difficulty is that when you meet other people on the field of difficulty or hardship, there's something deeper than happens than when you meet them on the field of triumph.
Come on.
People who have um, people who meet other folks that have suffered from cancer together or suffered the
Yeah.
loss of a child together have a bond that's
Yeah.
different than people who have gone on a European vacation.
Yeah.
Or both experience big promotions. So I think to be able to talk with Dallas about the wounds of life and meet with him there, that would be very meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that phrase. You admire people for strengths, but you really do connect in the weaknesses and in the low spots. And as you were talking, I was even thinking of Jesus's parable of the two debtors, right? The debtor of 50 and the debtor of 500. And those who have the debt of 500, just like you can connect and have an understanding of the grace that comes because the hardship is inversely proportional to the level of grace. And that's, or the level of joy experienced, I should say, with grace. John, thanks for sharing that with me. That was gracious of you to be vulnerable there and even share that moment, because I know how special it was to you. And I just always find that to be, can't live there all the time, but I would say a healthy exercise to sometimes do that, to know, to be reminded of the richness those relationships had, and to know, sometimes I think it helps me remember what the most important thing going on in my own life is, because that's what I would want to talk to my mom about. Yeah. And so then if my life isn't full of those things, then I should probably shift to prioritizing and caring there. Yeah. Yeah. John, this has been, well, I mean, I've got a whole new business motto. I've got a shift. I've got an inverse on for one of my organizations out of it. So very practical, but truly a gift for me. Truly a gift for me. So thank you for sharing your time. I know it will be for our listeners. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share before I read a verse as we close out the episode?
I think I'd want to tell everybody, particularly because work, ever since the curse, work has been a struggle. Whatever it is, whatever you're doing, whether the scale is large or small, if it's for a paycheck or not for a paycheck, it's worth it. That we're part of a vast project, a grand cosmic adventure, and we have no idea what the scale of it is. We talk a lot about scale and will it scale? Actually, scale's in God's hand, and it's going to scale. You give a cup of cold water in Jesus' name, and it has an eternal ripple to it. So the main point of that is don't give up. Don't think it's meaningless. It is worthy of the best efforts that you can bring to it. The scale is beyond what you can imagine, but it's in God's hands. So keep going.
Even the story of how this week was the 10-year anniversary of even meeting Kevin, and that, just the little dots, the little reminders that God gives us of that cosmic timeline that is beyond our capacity. Oh, yeah, John. Okay, so the inspiration verse for this episode is out of Isaiah 61. And I'm going to read it, and then we'll close out. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to grant those who mourn in Zion, and to give them a beautiful headdress instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the garment of praise instead of a faint spirit. And here it is, that they may be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified. Listeners and viewers, thank you for joining us today. John, thank you for sharing your stories and time and wisdom with us. And until we are all together again next week, choose life. Thanks for tuning into our show. If you want to learn more about how you can integrate your faith into your business, download our integrated business guide for free by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.